Even hardworking employed middle-class Americans are not immune to the threat of homelessness. You might find it hard to believe, but this is the truth. The American middle class, once regarded as a symbol of stability and prosperity, is now teetering on the brink of homelessness. What has truly happened? For many, just one delayed paycheck or an unexpected bill is enough to leave them without a home. Choices that once seemed unimaginable are of middle class, deciding between rent and groceries or between medication and utility bills. Join us as we uncover the hidden truths behind the so-called American dream and find the answer to the question, how is it that even the middle class? Walking along the streets of major cities, you will easily come across heartbreaking scenes, makeshift tents crammed into every corner where the homeless seek refuge. Subways, old cars, public parks, any place that provides shelter have become their homes. You might think that homelessness only affects people without stable jobs or immigrants striving for a better life but failing. However, this is not entirely true. Even the middle class in America, those with jobs and steady incomes, can find themselves becoming homeless. They are challenging with the inability to afford rent, while their basic needs for essential living expenses remain unmet, leading to financial instability and leaving them precariously on the brink of homelessness. This raises a pressing question: what has happened to the American dream? For decades, middle-class Americans have been facing a challenging economic reality: stagnant wages while the cost of living continues to rise relentlessly. So one might think that a full-time job would ensure financial stability, but for many, it is simply not enough. They find themselves challenging to make ends meet, trapped in a precarious financial state with no clear way out. Unrelenting inflation and the ever-increasing costs of housing, healthcare, and daily necessities have pushed countless middle-class families to the brink of homelessness. This is not just a matter of numbers, it is a series of heartbreaking, real-life stories. I drive a 20-year-old car. I had to find a park on a hill to set up a temporary living arrangement, just so I could keep going to work. But even then, I can't afford to pay my rent. One middle-class worker shared their experience. Story is not unique. Similar scenarios are unfolding across the country. It is one of many pieces in the bleak picture of the American middle class, once stable, now on the verge of losing everything. Notably, the economic situation for the middle class in America has become increasingly dire due to the significant decline in the value of the dollar. Since the 1990s, the dollar has lost up to 82% of its purchasing power, meaning that the money earned by middle-class workers today buys far less than it decades ago. The median household income in 1980 was around $21,000, which translates to approximately $70,000 in today's dollars. However, in 2023, the actual median household income was only slightly above $70,000, despite decades of rising costs. Take, for example, the cost of a burger, a simple meal that highlights the growing burden of inflation. Decades ago, in the 1980s, you could buy a burger for less than $1. Today, the average burger costs anywhere between $5 and $10, depending on the location. For a family of 4, what once was an affordable meal can now feel like a financial concern. Meanwhile, the cost of housing, healthcare, education, and daily necessities continues to rise significantly, while wages have remained relatively unchanged. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the real median household income has seen only minimal growth over the past 20 years, and this growth has notably failed to keep pace with inflation. This highlights a concerning paradox. Even families in the middle class, working full-time and maintaining what seems like a stable lifestyle, may still face financial insecurity. For these families, unexpected financial challenges are no longer distant possibilities but potential realities. So this economic vulnerability underscores the growing challenges the middle class faces in today's evolving economy. This might surprise you even more. Nearly 60% of middle-class Americans have less than $1,000 in their savings accounts, leaving them in an extremely precarious position when faced with unexpected expenses. A sudden medical bill, emergency car repairs, an unplanned investment in a field, or even the costs arising from an unforeseen accident, all of these could quickly become catalysts for a homelessness crisis in a short period of time. I always have to spend carefully and plan everything meticulously because I know that if I make a mistake, my entire family will suffer. We've been through so much hardship already, shared a wife from a middle-class family in the US. Please like this video, subscribe to our channel to discover more interesting stories with us. The United States is in the grip of a housing crisis like never before, with nearly 43 million families now renting their homes, a staggering milestone in the nation's history. But what's even more troubling is the dramatic rise in middle-class renters. These are households earning between $56,000 and $100,000 annually who have been forced to shift from homeownership to renting. In just a few years, this demographic has ballooned by an astonishing 86%, according to Harvard University's Joint Center for Housing Studies. So this shift is happening against the backdrop of historically low rental vacancy rates, creating competition for limited housing options and driving costs sky high. Housing prices have surged, with the average home now costing $84,000 more than it did a few years ago. Meanwhile, rents have climbed by over $1,150 annually, leaving middle-class renters whose incomes have dropped 9% over the last decade trying to keep up. For many, these rising costs have become simply unsustainable. This is not an isolated case. Across the country, countless middle-class renters are enduring precarious living conditions or making difficult sacrifices to their quality of life. According to research, nearly 46.3% of middle-class renters now spend more than the recommended 30% of their income on housing, with many exceeding 50%. So this is not an isolated case. Across the country, countless middle-class renters are enduring precarious living conditions or making difficult sacrifices to their quality of life. According to research, nearly 46.3% of middle-class renters now spend more than the recommended 30% of their income on housing, with many exceeding 50%, placing them in the severely burdened category. This financial strain doesn't just limit immediate spending, it strips people of the ability to save, invest, or prepare for emergencies. For these families, even a modest rent increase can trigger a downward spiral, exposing the fragile line between stability and crisis. So this growing trend underscores the urgent need for systemic solutions to alleviate the burden on America's middle class. In addition, the skyrocketing property market has made homeownership a distant dream for many middle-income families. Most homes are now well beyond the reach of first-time buyers, and rising interest rates, the steepest in over a decade, have only made the situation worse. A family looking to buy a home today might need to save for an entire extra year just to afford the standard 20% down payment, further delaying their dreams and forcing them into an already overburdened rental market. Yes, the housing crisis traces its roots back to the Great Recession, a period when housing construction came to a near standstill. The shortage of new homes still haunts the market today, with middle-class renters who traditionally relied on homeownership now flooding the rental market. Even families earning six-figure incomes are finding it increasingly difficult to secure homes in cities where wages have failed to keep pace with the soaring cost of living. The so-called missing middle refers to people with moderate incomes. They earn too much to qualify for government subsidies but not enough to live comfortably in the open housing market. So as a result, they are being gradually pushed out of middle-income neighborhoods, where rising living costs and housing prices make it impossible for them to continue living there. Experts emphasize that this crisis is no longer limited to low-income households. It now impacts families with stable, well-paying jobs who find themselves in a precarious position, earning too much to qualify for housing subsidies, but not enough to afford the inflated costs of homeownership or rent. For example, raising a middle-class family comfortably in many U.S. cities now requires an income approaching $300,000 annually, far beyond the reach of most Americans. Why can high living costs affect the American dream? Signs of financial strain are becoming increasingly evident. Across the U.S., rising living expenses are contributing to economic challenges that require urgent attention. If left unaddressed, the housing crisis could impact not only individual families but also the broader stability of the national economy. As property prices soar and affordable housing options become more limited, the question is no longer whether action is needed, but how soon effective solutions can be implemented. Addressing the housing crisis proactively could prevent larger economic challenges in the future and ensure a more stable and prosperous society for all. At the core of this issue lies, housing expenses don't merely dictate where people reside, they shape every facet of their lives. According to a study by Apartment List, households that spend more than 30% of their income on rent are forced to make difficult trade-offs, such as cutting food spending by 41% and healthcare spending by a staggering 74%. These choices are not just about budgeting, they represent life-altering sacrifices. Across the country, nearly 51 million households cannot afford even a basic monthly budget that covers essentials like housing, food, childcare, and transportation. This growing disparity reveals the fragility of the middle class and the structural flaws within America's housing system. Moreover, job loss and economic instability are also profound causes. The COVID-19 pandemic left millions unemployed or facing pay cuts, while inflation drove up the cost of essential goods. The lack of long-term labor protection policies further left many families unable to weather the crisis, increasing the risk of homelessness. All these factors have created a worrying reality, threatening even those groups once considered safe in society. Take the story of a middle-class family. Both parents had stable jobs before the pandemic. One worked as a teacher and the other as a restaurant manager. When the pandemic hit, the restaurant closed, leaving one parent unemployed, while the teacher's salary was reduced due to budget cuts. With their income halved and medical bills piling up after a bout with COVID-19, they fell behind on rent. Despite their efforts to recover, rising costs and limited government support forced the family to leave their home and move into a small RV. Their story highlights how even seemingly secure families can quickly spiral into homelessness during a crisis. One of the most significant factors contributing to housing instability for middle-class families is the burden of personal debt. In times of financial strain, many middle-class families turn to credit cards to cover living expenses. However, high interest rates often cause these debts to balloon uncontrollably, trapping them in a cycle of repayment. The Federal Reserve reports that household debt has reached unprecedented levels, further straining the financial health of the average American. Next, younger individuals within the middle class are burdened by enormous student loan debt, leaving them unable to afford a home or start a family, let alone build any financial security. The housing crisis is widening the economic gap, making homeownership increasingly accessible only to those with the highest incomes. This trend challenges the traditional stability associated with the middle class, placing even hardworking families at greater financial risk. Housing insecurity is no longer limited to the poorest households, but has become a growing concern for many middle-class families once considered financially secure. Personal debt can create significant financial challenges for families, making it difficult to prioritize essential expenses such as housing. In some cases, this cycle of debt can lead to housing insecurity, highlighting how financial struggles can undermine the stability and dreams of middle-class households. Addressing these challenges through financial education and support programs could provide a pathway to greater stability. The rising cost of housing and the shortage of affordable options are challenging the stability of the U.S. economy. As these issues persist, addressing them becomes increasingly urgent. The question is not whether change is necessary, but how quickly effective action can be taken. Proactive reforms could mitigate long-term economic risks and create a more sustainable future for all. The housing crisis is widening the economic divide, making homeownership increasingly accessible only to the wealthiest. This trend challenges the traditional stability provided by the middle class, leaving even hard-working families more vulnerable to financial hardship. So housing insecurity is no longer limited to the poorest households, but has become a growing concern for many middle-class families once considered financially secure. Social welfare systems, while vital for those in deep poverty, often fail to catch middle-class families when they fall. For instance, a hardworking couple may have diligently paid their bills and saved for the future, only to see their stability unravel when one of them loses a job. With no access to housing assistance or other support programs, they could lose their home and be forced to start over without a safety net. Similarly, long-term workers in industries like manufacturing often face stagnant wages that fail to keep up with the rising cost of living. As a result, some individuals rely on credit cards to cover everyday expenses, leading to debt that can become difficult to manage in the event of job loss due to layoffs or downsizing. This financial strain can result in housing instability, with affected families facing uncertainty about their future and the challenge of breaking free from economic hardship. The consequences of this crisis extend far beyond individual families. Homelessness and housing instability take a toll on mental health, creating long-lasting stress and anxiety. Young people in unstable living conditions often face developmental challenges, and the ripple effects contribute to broader social issues such as strain on public health and welfare systems. Without swift and decisive action, the American dream of a stable and secure home is slipping further out of reach for millions. Faced with this increasingly alarming situation, the government and nonprofit organizations are striving to implement solutions to alleviate the housing burden on citizens, particularly middle-class families in the U.S. Several affordable housing programs have been introduced, enabling low and middle-income individuals to access homes within their financial means. Additionally, initiatives aimed at protecting renters from eviction, especially during emergencies like the COVID-19 pandemic, have helped prevent many families from falling into homelessness. Furthermore, charitable organizations and local communities play a crucial role. Many have provided temporary shelter for the homeless, offering them a safe place to stay in the short term. Financial support programs, such as small loans or grants, have also been introduced to help families overcome immediate difficulty. However, these solutions remain limited. The scale of current programs is often too small to effectively address such a large issue. Many middle-class families are left behind, unable to qualify for assistance, while resources fall short of meeting the growing demand. In homeless crisis in the U.S., the plight of the middle class teetering on the brink of homelessness is a stark reminder that no one is immune to economic instability. What was once a secure foundation for millions of hardworking families is now increasingly fragile, as stagnant wages, soaring living costs, and insufficient safety nets push them toward the edge. This is not merely an economic issue but a moral challenge, compelling us to reflect on the values of equity, community, and shared responsibility. If the middle class, the backbone of society, cannot find stability, the ripple effects will weaken the entire social fabric. The time to act is now. Together, through awareness, compassion, and systemic reform, we can address the root causes and ensure that the dream of a safe and stable home remains within reach for all. Thank you for watching our documentary on the homelessness crisis impacting middle-class Americans. This video is just a glimpse into a much larger issue meant to raise awareness and inspire action. If you found it valuable, please subscribe, and share your thoughts or topic suggestions in the comments. Your support helps us continue shedding light on critical issues. See you in the next video.